On today's episode, we're talking with Karen McCullough, no relation. Yet we met at the National Speakers Association, where for years, anytime I approached the registration desk, I would say, they'd ask for my last name and I'd say McCullough and they would say Karen. And then when I met Karen for the first time, she said the same thing. She would approach the registration desk. She would say her last name was McCullough and they would say Michelle and she would say, no, Karen. And so it's fun for us to meet in this circle. I'm sure we're related somehow back, if you go back generations, because aren't we all? But it's fun to have her on the show. One of the things that I love about Karen is her commitment to and dedication to understanding generational diversity. When I completed my study in January of this year and we got the results in March, one of the things that I was really interested in is the generational differences between happiness in the workplace and also leadership qualities. And so because I've been talking about generations as well, it's been fun to have this intersection with Karen. She is very impressive and has done all kinds of work helping people understand their strengths and teams, fostering and enriching work environments, and also helping people understand how they can use generational advantages for themselves personally and professionally. Additionally, she's also very fun. We have had some fun conversations together, but she's worked with some big names like the World Bank, McDonald's, Humana, NASA, Johnson Space Center, and many more. And so, Karen, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Michelle. Hi, sister.
It's so fun to have this conversation. I love that you and I have bonded over generational differences over the years and had some conversations, especially in the last couple of months. And so one of the places that I wanted to start is, how did you become interested in this subject? What was it that really drew you in to understanding the effects of generations personally and professionally?
I even know the year. So I started speaking in 1999, in the 20th century, I started speaking. And yeah, I love to say that. And I spoke on change. I had been through a lot of changes in my business, and I was taking that whole concept of change into the workplace. And I liked it. I spoke, my talk was called Change is Good, You Go First. And people loved the title back then. They still do. And so it was good. And then in 2006, I know exactly when, I was watching American Idol. You remember when it was good? I don't know if you I'm just kidding. But I was watching American Idol with Simon and the whole group, and they had a contestant on who they called him a Gen Y back then. He was a millennial. His name was Sanjaya. And he opened my mind to someone being not good, but their parents, the parents of this Sanjaya, told him he was great. After every episode, he got worse and worse, but the parents were there. And I thought, this is very different, because a Gen Xer, if they were not performing well, their parents would pull them off the stage and go, you've embarrassed me. But these people were very pro this kid. And this kid was very, very different. And at the time, we were voting on flip phones and the audience was becoming part of it. And I sat there as a speaker and I said, this is change. I want to be a part of this picture. And so I immediately started studying Gen Y. And in the beginning, because I feel like I'm a little bit funny, I totally made fun of them. And with that whole baby boomer audience, right, backing me up, I just got like applause and standing ovation, because we were waiting for this younger generation to just grow up and become us. And it's interesting because that was 2006. I have evolved. I have changed. I have grown with this generation. And I hope to bring my audiences along on this journey of change. Especially, I'm going to be talking to all CEOs. I just got a booking for February, and they are going to they're having a hard time right now on this journey of younger people. So my goal is to bring people along with me. I've had this transition, and I'm going to bless them for it, because it's made, as a speaker, it's kept my content rich, alive, and exciting.
Well, it's interesting to me because one of the things that I think is generational differences aren't necessarily a new thing. There have been generations in the workplace for decades. I mean, 40 years ago, there were multiple generations in the workplace. I think, however, there are some differences now in terms of how people approach life and how people approach work that make the generations that we currently have in the workplace and that we interact with kind of unique. I think there are some also misconceptions that there's one generation that's good or bad, or one generation that's lazy and one generation that's more productive. How do we have productive conversations when it comes to generational differences in a way that honors each individual and each age group?
I believe every generation has a story, and these stories are the foundation of their values, their ethic, how they approach work, how they approach life, family. And they're created probably when we're in our teens and 20s. And we hold on to these. And so every generation brings that story that I like to call it that work ethic of how work should be done. You know, how families should run. And we bring these stories with us. And as we watch the generations evolve, you know, from the traditionalists, which are people that are now in their 80s, all the way down to now Gen Z, and soon we'll have Gen Alpha, we're realizing that with technology, you know, with the changes that have gone on globally and internally, these stories have evolved and changed so much. And so I try to encourage people, let's honor your story. And then let's just leave it aside and let's look forward as we grow. So I use the word growth because without growth, there will be no productivity. Without growth, there will be no success. And it's interesting because I think that once we let go of our story, so I'm working a lot right now with I'm doing smaller groups, a lot in healthcare, where this generational boundary, so to speak, has really formed healthcare. Physicians in the day, the baby boomer physicians working those 3-day shifts, you know, 72 hours. And today, these younger people are saying, no, I can't do that. Physically, it's burning me out. I'm not as good at work. And what I'm hearing with all of the panel discussions we've been growing, it's opened my eyes to the stories of regret, to the stories of lost lives, lost experiences, lost memories. Didn't get to my kids this, didn't get to my own father's funeral. A surgeon just recently was talking about her biggest regret is that she forgot that she needed to get married. And didn't have, yeah. So we start to hear this. So all of a sudden, I love this idea of honesty and people are speaking up. And we're beginning to hear now these generational stories that are now taking on a new look.
I think that is really great to look at the different stories that are there. One of the things that I find interesting is when I give a keynote, one of the ways that I introduce generational differences, generational approaches, and specifically the generational impact in the workplace and leadership, one of the ways that I roll that out is through a quiz. And so I will do like a trivia question, go out into the audience, find someone, give them multiple choice answers, and give them an opportunity to earn a book if they get the question right, but they also still get the book if they get the question wrong.
Good, nice idea.
I share this with you because since I have added the generational research, I will choose someone in the audience who raises their hand. And one of the questions that I ask is, which generation feels like they are most in control of improving their happiness and resilience? And so on the board, your choices are younger millennial, older millennial, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. And interestingly enough, every time I have asked this question, whoever I am asking will choose their own generation.
Yes.
And I love it. Like, I didn't notice this. This was like I asked it yesterday at a keynote. I asked it a couple of weeks ago in San Antonio. I asked it when I was in Florida. So I've asked it 6 or 7 times. Every single time, the respondent will choose their own generation. I thought it was just a weird nuance.
No.
They will choose their own generation, and I love it. I love that they think that their generation is the most in control of their happiness. According to the research, people said that millennials were in the most in control. But I also feel like we as individuals want to believe that our generation is the happiest, and we want to believe that our generation is the most resilient. And so what's interesting is we will think the best of our own generation, but it's so easy to think negatively of a different generation. Why do you think that nuance exists? And why do you feel like as we look around, we're more likely to feel like we're the ones that are doing it right?
Well, it's because it's a thread. What I love about the topic is you just get bonding right off the bat. It doesn't matter what, well, except baby boomers now. I only have like 4 in the audience. I remember when everybody was a baby boomer, but now they go like, I'm a baby boomer. But as soon as I get to Gen X, they are like proud of it. And I have a different approach. I actually take them down some of the things that happened in their lifetime. And I do talk about the white Bronco. I'll get people laughing, with OJ and how many remember that? And I try to pick fun things, funny things that they remember. That's like the glue that sticks them together. And there is definitely that feeling. But me as a speaker, I then have to bring about the little challenges that the generations go through. And so I kind of call them on their stuff. And Gen X is really easy to call on their stuff. But I do find, and I'm glad that you said this, that if you're talking about happiness, it's millennials. When they came into my audience, life got great and happy. And I don't know why, because they've been through so much stuff. But, you think about what millennials have been through with their career and all of the things that really block their growth. They're the best in the audience. They want to laugh. They want to be engaging. They want to interact. They want to participate. So they are the happiest.
Well, and when you say that, as I look back historically, I'm one of those individuals who I straddle X and Y. So depending on the time of year, because I'm born in June, the way that 1979 and the way that 44 is, sometimes they will put me, depending on how I check the box, in the Y, or they'll put me in the X.
You're an exennial.
So, which is fine. But one of the things that I have seen looking back is I feel like millennials were really the first generation that challenged work-life balance in new ways.
Well, they aren't. Gen X tried.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gen X tried, and they should be given credit that they were so small. And that baby boomer, when the Gen X said, I want to go see my kid's t-ball game, I want to take off. And the boss said, it's a practice. You go to the game on Saturday when you have a day off. They were squelched. And so those Gen X women, if you start talking to them with the baby bottle and the career and the briefcase and all of this going on, they had to really struggle. They tried, but baby boomers called them slackers. Mm-hmm. And so because they were smaller than this big baby boomer generation, they were totally overwhelmed. So yeah, millennials get credit for it, but the reality of it is we should honor Gen X for trying. I'm going to be fair all the way across.
Of course. And I feel like each generation paves the way for the next to be able to have the things that they need. And I also feel like that's the beauty of the American spirit, is we do what we can, and we hope that the next group will pick up what they can, and that we're constantly finding ways to make change and make it better. Let's talk for a minute about generational differences when it comes to focuses and interests and where they spend their time outside of the office. Are you finding that there are some trends that you're seeing, or that there are some things that we can watch for that help us understand different values?
I really, right now, my focus is on the election. And my focus is on how we get our information. So I'm not sure where they're drinking at night, if they're going out. I don't know. I see the DoorDash trucks all around me. I'm surrounded by a lot of young people. So I'm sure so many people just don't. The cooking is a hobby now. People order out, they go out, they bring it in. But I feel like for me, this whole Joe Rogan thing, it really got me, because all my friends are baby boomers. And they're just like, oh my gosh, did you see the news today? Did you watch the news last night? And the answer is no, because we can get it so many different ways. And what's beginning to happen is, I think it's very obvious that, I'm not going to say younger people, I'm going to say people, and a lot of it is influenced by younger people, are starting to hear and get their information from podcasts and all different sources. And I'm feeling like these choices are out there, and we better become aware of it, because the way that we're communicating our messaging is changing. The way we're getting our ideas across to people is changing. And so it requires us to open our minds, experiment, be curious, and keep growing and trying, but to realize that our way is not the way. And so I don't know, I'm just watching this all, and I'm trying to explain to my friends that it isn't just happening at the 5:30 or 6 o'clock news. It's happening all day. And we're really getting, and we're really, and there's just, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Scott Galloway. I love this guy. He's from Stanford, but I like to learn about men, and Scott Galloway is big on younger men and work and the work ethic. And I follow and I listen to him because he's got so many young followers. So I need to keep my mind open to where things are happening. So that's how I keep abreast of things. How do you keep abreast?
I think that I like what you had to say. I think that one of the things that you touched on that I think is the most important is when I go into any circumstance, whether it is personal, even relating to different generations at the grocery store, or having interactions with different people in social environments and social settings, I think looking for the good in everyone is sometimes tricky. Because if you're in a situation that's hard or there's a challenge, but looking for the good will help you find a way to bridge the gap. And there are gaps everywhere we go in the way that we communicate, in the ways that we see the world, in the ways that we show up. And so looking for the good really is at the center of that. And I think that also is the key in the workplace. And so as we transition, I'd love to chat about some of the generational differences that you're seeing in the workplace, specifically around this thought that I am noticing from managers and leaders who are dealing with the delicate balance of adapting to the people around them while also trying to be authentic to who they are. And knowing that adaptability for the different generations on their team, or even with their bosses or board members or other people that they end up working with, trying to find that balance between adaptability and authenticity. What thoughts do you have about how we can better approach generations in the workplace?
Well, let me go back a little bit. So I do a lot. So they're putting longer Q&As in my virtuals. So I'm hearing more. And so I'll give my talk and people are like, oh, I loved it and all of that. And then we do the Q&A. And the Q&A, and I just did a big corporation in DC where they were in the audience and they came and talked to me afterwards. And they go, yeah, I get all this, but here we go. I'm left holding the bag. So I've got someone that takes a mental health day 3 days a week. I'm trying to explain to them that, I value that about you. I understand it, but there are people that when you're not here have to take your place. So it all sounds really great. And this is why I kind of love my topic, because I don't just come in and put sugar on everything. I get to hear the problems, and I hear them mostly from Gen X and older millennials that are in leadership roles right now. Like, it sounds really good, and I really believe in all of this, but darn it, we can't get the work done when people don't show up, when they're not productive. And so, for me, it all goes. I spoke on branding a long time ago, and it was understanding your culture and your brand. And I believe that we have to really own our cultures. We have to own that piece that we respect each other. We work hard. We're all for growth. There has to be some sort of messaging that we're still about growth. And that has to be piggybacked on this whole idea of mental wellness and taking care of ourselves. So yeah, it's a slippery slope. And it's not an easy one. So when I do a keynote and I don't get to talk to the people, I just get to talk in the halls. It's easy. But these virtuals, they're open. And I just did MD Anderson, and they did a 30-minute Q&A. And when
Wow.
the truth, because people, it sounds great, but now I've got to figure out how to do this. So what do we need? We need more training. We need more people understanding emotional intelligence. How do we communicate kindly, but with boundaries? There's so many things now that we have to train. So I believe that we're all growing in our communication styles right now, and how we deal with differing ideas. It's going to require us to have some sort of training. We're not just born great communicators. You have to work at it. How do we tell somebody that, you've got to come to work? I value your health, but there's also a job here. And if we don't grow, we're not going to get paid. So anyway, those are the difficult conversations that are also going on that sometimes we don't talk about.
Yes, I definitely am hearing more and more of that from leaders as well. How do I balance mental wellness and productivity and the demands that are on me by my boss or by shareholders and how do you balance all of that when you do want to manage and support individuals' own emotional intelligence, and that's tricky. I think it's not a cookie cutter solution where in the past we would create policies, and sometimes it means that we might have to take an individual approach to how we look at that, and that makes it really tricky for managers who are hopping from one person to the next and trying to figure out how to make it fair while honoring individual differences, and that's tricky too.
It's tricky. And I think that it's made my role as a speaker so much more exciting because I don't just give you the five how-tos. So because I do use humor in a little bit of my kind of edgy way, I'll definitely throw the bomb out there and I will kind of put it in. So probably I am encouraging those questions because I'll throw the bomb in the middle of the keynote. I'll say something and then I'll go, well, we'll talk about that one later. And that's what will come up. But I feel like as speakers, I feel for my role or people that speak the way on the generations, we've got to begin to challenge. We've got to begin to challenge the status quo. But we've also got to begin to challenge ideas that sound really great on paper, but as far as growth and productivity go, they're not working so well. So we've got to be much more realistic.
I agree. One of the things that we found in our research is that generations look at different leadership qualities in different ways in terms of especially how they look at what decreases or drains their happiness and productivity at work. Generation X believes significantly more than younger generations that not being supportive and being dishonest are the leadership qualities that will most decrease or drain their happiness at work. So Gen X is laying it down and saying that they believe that having a not supportive or having a boss that's dishonest is tricky for them. Gen Z, on the other hand, and also younger millennials, believe significantly more that having no emotional intelligence or being old-fashioned is what decreases their happiness and productivity at work. And that speaks to your point in terms of emotional intelligence, because I think if you have an older boss that isn't necessarily as focused on emotional intelligence, that there may be more focused on something else, it might be tricky if you value emotional intelligence. And so finding ways to deal with some of that. As you look at the employee-boss relationship, what are some things that you would recommend to employees as they think about how they deal with or talk with their managers in a way that respects both generations?
The question is, how do I help employees
Yes.
talk to
What
their
would you say to
managers?
employees about how to talk to their managers that might be in a different generation?
Well, I get this a lot. If I'm doing a conference where I'm going to just say 20% of the audience is Gen Z, which I just did, I immediately ask them if I can interview them. Can we do a LinkedIn connection? Can I interview you? Because I definitely want to know. And the thing that I hear the most is there are so many things I need to change. I get into work and I see all of the problems, the things that are really getting in our way of success. And they are really excited about making those changes. And so my advice to them is to simmer down. When you go in and you tell your boss or your supervisor, this place could really do a lot better if we did the following, and you've only been there a month, it's irritating. And so I feel like this emotional intelligence that you said that they want their managers to have, they also need it. They also need to understand that they're not going to get what they want today, and that this is a process of collaboration and ideas, and this is how cultures are formed and how work gets done. For many younger employees, this is their first job, And they really are used to coaches and people guiding them. And they're looking at the boss as more as a coach and someone that's going to help them grow. And the reality of it is you think about that manager that's just trying to get their work done and get everybody on, and they don't have time for just, so there's this whole cycle going on right now. When I talk to universities, I ask them, because they're very proud. They're very proud that they're teaching their graduates to have a voice. And so I had the opportunity to speak to the team that was going to hire a speaker. And I said, I hear that, but that voice is irritating. It's going to get them in trouble when they get into it. Oh, but we tell them to wait. So kids are being told that they have a voice to speak up, but yet when they get into work, it doesn't fit. So you see what I'm saying? This is like a well-greased wheel or a piece of machinery. We just don't go in and expect people to respect us and trust us and listen to us, and we've only been there a short time. So it takes a lot of curiosity. It takes a lot of questioning. It takes a lot of understanding, and it takes a lot of emotional intelligence on both sides.
Agreed. Well, you've provided some good thoughts for both leaders and employees in terms of bridging the gap for generations in the workplace. Are there any other workplace dynamics that you feel like are important to consider on either side before we finish the conversation?
The one that I'm really excited about is virtual. It's this work from anywhere. So the biggest challenge that I'm hearing is how do we want relationships to matter. And we want to teach our teams that these relationships within the team matter, caring about people, watching their growth, being there long enough to care about the people on the team. The challenge is how do we grow that virtually? Because more and more, and I believe in virtual. I mean, so many of the groups I talk to are international, and this is the best way to keep everybody together. So I feel like there's going to need to be a sessions, growth, training, whatever, on how do we now build virtual relationships? And how do we do that? I love the whole idea that cameras are always off now. You tell people to put the camera on and they're just going to complain and they're going to groan. So there's a resistance. There's a resistance to building relationships that people don't even know they have. And I think it's called laziness, whatever it is, just easier to, not have your camera on, just to listen. But it's not really, in the end, if we look at the team, it's not really growing. So I think that's going to be the big challenge. How do we begin to grow these relationships with our teams and get people to care about each other?
Yes, you are not wrong. In fact, this was something that we really spent some time on in the research study that we did, because employees note that they value being able to choose their work environment, whether they work remotely or work hybrid. They want to be at the center of that. What we also found in the research is that those who work remotely are not as happy as those who work in the office. Now, confounding variables, and it doesn't change everything, but more of the data is showing us that when we interact with each other, when we see each other more, we give more patience and grace. We're better team builders. We're more likely to have those conversations. And so, to your point, organizations need to figure out how to improve team building for remote environments, whether that's through Zoom meetings, in-person meetings, bringing people together. And interestingly enough, the research showed that they're open to it. They're open to in-person meetings. They're open to team building activities together. And so I think that in this dichotomy of allowing remote environments, and especially where you said, like even international, we still have to figure out how to bridge some of those gaps, because it's important not just for happiness and fulfillment, but for productivity, innovation, and being good team players.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you did the research. I'm just kind of talking of what I see. So I feel like, good, I'm on track.
Yes, you are. It's a challenge for every organization that I sit with and every group that I talk to, as they want to provide environments that people want, but also dealing with the challenges that come with the working environments that are offered. Okay, so Karen, I appreciate you for being here on the conversation today. We've covered a lot of ground on generations. both personally and also in the workplace. Is there one piece of advice that you'd like to leave our audience as we close this conversation today in terms of how they approach both their own and other generations in interaction?
My biggest piece of advice is get excited about the future. Get excited about new ways of learning, new ways of doing things. AI is coming in. Be open. For me, I definitely have to have a bunch of Gen Zs on my team. And listen, ask questions and just listen. Stop the judgments. It's just so 1984. You got to keep moving forward. And we've got to begin to understand that we have to bring common sense, how we relate to people, this humanness into the conversation, and that we're going to be okay, but it's going to be different. It's going to be different. And I want to be part of it. I want to be part of that show. I don't want to be left behind. And I'm old. I mean, this is, I think, what's kept me so young is enjoying all of these challenges and keeping my mind open. And so I tell everyone that. I said, be excited about some of the things that are happening and start listening to a couple podcasts.
That is great advice. Where can people find out more about you?
Oh, go to my website, KarenMcCullough.com. KarenMcCullough.com or LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Karen McCullough 1. I'd love to connect. And I just appreciate you having me today. You can tell I love talking about this topic. I just love it.
I'm so glad you came on. I love your energy and your passion. And I love your commitment to looking for the best in each group, each generation, and inspiring that from other people.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks so much for being here, Karen. We will make sure that her information is listed in the show notes so that you can have that. So it's right there below. Also, if you'd like more information about the research that we conducted this year, you can go to speakmichelle.com/research. That is also in the show notes. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments on how you bridge the gap between generations, both personally and professionally. Thanks for being here.